The night my husband died, I thought I'd buried every part of myself with him, especially the part that craved touch. But then his best friend, Adam, started showing up. Not just with flowers for the grave, but with quiet glances that lingered, hands that brushed too close, and a voice that made my skin hum. It started innocent, a shared drink, a memory, a laugh. But one night, he whispered, "You don't have to be alone tonight." That's when I crossed a line I can never uncross. My husband's grave was still fresh, and so was my guilt. It had been nearly 2 years since I lost Michael. The world had carried on as if nothing had happened. But for me, time had split into 2 parts, before and after him. I still slept on my side of the bed, cooked too much food, and left the bathroom light on because he used to say he liked the glow at night. The grief was quiet now, not the kind that knocked the wind out of me anymore, but the kind that settled in my bones like a constant ache. I lived in a small suburb outside of Portland, in the same house Michael and I had bought 10 years ago. The neighbors had changed. Friends had drifted. But one person who always checked in was Jason, Michael's closest friend since college. They'd served in the military together. And even after they both left the service, their bond never faded. Jason was there when Michael proposed to me. He was the best man at our wedding. And he was the first person at the hospital when Michael got sick. After the funeral, Jason stayed close, not in an overbearing way, but quietly dependable. He would bring groceries, mow the lawn when he saw it getting out of hand, and text me every Sunday to ask if I needed anything. At first, I thought it was just his way of honoring Michael, of staying loyal to his memory. But slowly, our dynamic changed. One rainy afternoon in February, I was trying to change a ceiling light bulb and nearly fell off the step stool. Jason had shown up unannounced, something he'd never done before, and caught me mid-stumble. He steadied me, hands on my waist, and for a second longer than necessary, neither of us moved. His eyes searched mine, not in a romantic way, but in a concerned, intense silence that made me forget what I was doing. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice unusually soft. "Yeah, just clumsy today." He chuckled but didn't let go right away. That was the moment I started to notice him, not as Michael's best friend, but as a man. Jason was nothing like Michael. Where Michael had been quiet and reserved, Jason was straightforward and witty. He had a rough edge from his years in the service, but he was also kind and observant in ways that caught me off guard. He remembered how I took my coffee, always brought dark chocolate when I had a bad week, and even asked about the garden Michael and I used to tend together. One evening, after helping me fix a leaky kitchen faucet, Jason stayed for dinner. We ate spaghetti on the back porch, and as the sun dipped behind the trees, I realized I was laughing for the first time in a while. It felt foreign and familiar all at once. He told me stories about him and Michael in their younger days. How they once got caught sneaking into a dorm to prank a professor. How Michael had almost missed my wedding because Jason dared him to try surfing the morning of. I laughed so hard I cried. And then I cried because I missed Michael. Jason just sat with me, held my hand and didn't say a word. The weeks blurred after that. Jason came around more often. Sometimes just for a quick chat, sometimes to help with chores. It felt natural, easy. But there were moments when our comfort with each other bordered on something else. His hand resting on my back a little longer. A glance that lingered. Conversations that dipped into personal territory neither of us had dared to enter before. One night, we watched an old movie in the living room. I fell asleep with my head on his shoulder. When I woke up, it was past midnight and he was still there, wide awake, looking at the flickering credits on the screen. I apologized, pulling away, but he stopped me with a gentle touch on my wrist. "It's okay," he said. "I don't mind." That moment lingered with me for days. Still, I felt guilt. I questioned what this was turning into. Was I betraying Michael's memory? Was Jason using our shared grief as a bridge into something that shouldn't be? Or was it just 2 lonely people finding comfort in each other? It all came to a head one weekend when a storm rolled through and knocked out the power. Jason called to check in, and without hesitation, he said, "I'm coming over." He brought flashlights, batteries, and a bottle of red wine. We lit candles, played cards by lantern light, and for a few hours, the world outside vanished. The rain pounding the roof, the soft glow of candles, it all felt too intimate, too dangerous. But I didn't stop it. When I went to bed that night, I left my door cracked open. Not on purpose, or maybe exactly on purpose. I listened for his footsteps, my heart pounding. But he never came upstairs. The next morning, I found him asleep on the couch, his large frame curled under a throw blanket. He looked peaceful. I stood there longer than I should have, watching him breathe, wondering what I was doing and what I wanted to do. Was this grief? Was this healing? Or was it the beginning of something else entirely? The more time I spent with David, the more complicated everything became. What started as simple companionship had begun to feel like something else. I noticed the small things first. How my skin would tingle when his hand brushed against mine. How my heart skipped a beat when he leaned in to speak softly. How I caught myself wondering what it would feel like if he kissed me. And then there were his eyes, those steady, warm eyes that lingered too long on mine. Eyes that used to hold memories of my husband, but now seemed to reflect something else entirely. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was just vulnerable, lonely, craving any form of comfort after so much grief. But deep down, I knew better. David was looking at me differently. And I was responding in ways that would have shocked the version of myself from just a few months ago. Then one night, everything shifted. It had been raining all day. Those soft melancholic spring showers that made everything feel more intimate, more still. David had offered to come by and help clean the gutters, but we ended up just staying inside. I made us tea. We watched an old movie, Casablanca, of all things. And as the closing credits rolled, we sat in silence, the kind that was filled with unspoken words. He looked over at me and said, "You know, sometimes I feel like Mark would want me to be here for you in more ways than just a friend." My breath caught in my throat. I stared at him, unsure what to say. The words hung in the air, suspended by tension so thick it felt like a string could snap between us at any moment. I finally managed to whisper, "Do you really think that?" David nodded slowly. "I do, but only if you want that too. I don't want to overstep." Overstep. That word echoed in my mind. What would Mark think if he saw us now? His best friend, his wife, sharing late-night conversations, emotional intimacy, the kind of closeness I hadn't felt since the day I lost him. And yet, a traitorous part of me wanted to know what would happen if I said yes. I didn't respond. I just stood up, heart pounding, and told David I needed to go to bed. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake wrestling with guilt and desire. David gave me space, but his eyes still searched mine for some kind of answer. I avoided him, dodging calls, skipping our usual coffee meetups, shutting my front door a little too quickly. But avoidance couldn't last forever. The dam finally broke the following weekend. I was cleaning out the attic. One of those spontaneous grief-fueled bursts of productivity. And I came across a box of Mark's old belongings, letters, photos, a worn baseball glove, memories that rushed at me like a wave. I sat on the attic floor and cried. Not the quiet kind of crying, but the broken, shaking kind that hollows you out. I didn't even remember calling David, but somehow he was there. He found me like that on the attic floor, surrounded by dusty memories and Salt Street cheeks. He didn't say anything, just sat beside me, pulled me into his arms, and let me sob against his chest. We didn't talk about feelings that day or what had almost happened between us. But something changed after that. I let him back in. He started coming around again, helping with errands, fixing the leaky faucet, bringing me dinner when he knew I wouldn't cook. The space between us began to feel familiar again, but now with a flicker of tension in every look, every brush of fingers, every lingering goodbye at the door. And then came the night I found myself dressing with more intention before he came over. I had changed my shirt twice, put on mascara I hadn't touched in months, wiped the lipstick off, then reapplied it. That scared me more than anything else. I was preparing myself for what exactly? For David, for a second chance, or for a mistake I couldn't undo. When he showed up, he noticed. He didn't say anything, but his gaze told me he saw the effort. We had dinner, grilled salmon, wine, and soft jazz humming in the background. It felt romantic in a way neither of us wanted to admit. After we ate, I stood up to take our plates to the sink. As I turned, I felt his hand catch mine. "Stay," he said softly. I froze. This was the moment. The moment everything could tilt in one direction or the other. I sat back down slowly, my heart pounding loud enough. I was sure he could hear it. His thumb brushed across the back of my hand as his eyes searched mine. "Emily," he whispered, "I've wanted to kiss you for weeks." I swallowed hard. Everything in me screamed that this was wrong. And yet, wasn't there something also deeply right about it? He leaned in so close I could smell the warm spice of his cologne. So close I could feel his breath on my lips. But just before his lips touched mine, I pulled back. "I'm scared," I said. He didn't pressure me. "I know," he said. "So am I. But we can take it slow. Only if it feels right." I nodded, barely able to speak. Because for the first time in what felt like forever, the ache in my chest didn't feel quite so lonely anymore. It was well past midnight when I finally turned off the lights and slept under the covers. The chill of the sheets clinging to my skin. My heart was still racing from the evening's events. Matt's touch on my waist in the kitchen. His eyes on mine as he asked if I'd been lonely. I couldn't stop replaying those seconds, trying to decode his expression, his tone, the way his body leaned toward mine just enough to feel intentional. And then there was the look he gave me before heading to the guest room. It wasn't confusion, it was restraint. I lay in the dark, restless, flipping from side to side. I wasn't foolish. I knew the thin line we were towing. Matt had been my husband's best friend for over 15 years. He was with us through Michael's battle with cancer, there at the hospital the night he passed, helping carry the casket at the funeral. He'd seen me at my worst, at my most broken. And yet, when I closed my eyes that night, it wasn't memories of Michael I saw. It was Matt's hands on the back of my chair, his voice low and warm, the smell of his cologne lingering on my skin after he brushed past me. I tossed the blanket aside and stood, wrapping my robe around myself. Maybe a glass of water would help. Maybe I just needed to breathe. The hallway light was off and the house was quiet. I walked barefoot through the hardwood floors, the sound of the grandfather clock ticking in the living room, the only thing breaking the silence. But when I reached the kitchen, I froze. Matt was there. He stood at the counter in a white t-shirt and boxers, pouring himself a glass of water. His head turned when he heard me, his expression unreadable at first, then softening. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. I nodded, too stunned to speak at first. "Yeah, just too many thoughts." He handed me the glass he just filled. Our fingers touched barely, and yet that 1 second felt like it stretched forever. "Sit with me," he said gently. We moved to the living room, the only light coming from the moon filtering through the curtains. We sat on the couch, just close enough that our shoulders touched. I pulled my robe tighter, suddenly very aware of how thin it was. "I didn't mean to overstep earlier," he said suddenly. "In the kitchen. I've worried about you a lot. And tonight being here again, it felt familiar, but different." "I know," I said softly. "It's been hard. I didn't think I'd ever feel anything again." There was a pause, a heavy one. "But you did," he said, barely above a whisper. I turned my face toward him. "Did you?" He looked at me then. "Really?" Looked. His jaw tightened slightly as if holding something back. "I have for a long time. I just never let myself admit it. You were his, and I respected that. But I'm not his anymore," I whispered. That broke the silence like thunder. Matt shifted closer, brushing a lock of hair behind my ear. I never wanted this to happen like this. But you sitting across from me tonight, laughing again, breathing again, it woke something up in me, something I thought I'd buried. My breath hitched. He leaned in just close enough that our foreheads touched. His hand cooped my cheek. If this is wrong, say something. I'll stop. But if you feel it too, I can't pretend anymore. My lips parted. I should have said no. Should have stopped him. But my heart was beating out of my chest, my skin electric where he touched it. I closed the space between us. The kiss was soft at first, careful, then urgent. All those months of loneliness, of grief, and aching silence poured out of me in that moment. I clung to him and he to me. We weren't just kissing, we were confessing. We moved together instinctively, his hands finding the curve of my back, my fingers threading into his hair. He lifted me gently, carrying me to the couch as if I weighed nothing. His body hovered above mine, his eyes searching mine for any flicker of doubt. But there was none. "Are you sure?" he asked, voice ragged. I nodded. "I need this." He kissed me again, deeper this time. The world fell away. The past, the grief, the rules we'd both followed so tightly for so long. In that moment, there was just us. No guilt, no ghost of Michael watching us, only two people who had been broken and found comfort in each other's pieces. The night unfolded like a secret. Slow and intense. There were moments we paused, hands tangled, eyes locked, rediscovering how it felt to be seen again, wanted again. He was gentle in ways I hadn't felt in years, careful yet hungry, like he was memorizing every inch of me. And I let him. Afterward, we lay tangled in each other, breathless. My head on his chest, his hand stroking my hair. The silence was no longer heavy. It was warm, full. "I didn't expect this," I said softly. "Neither did I," he murmured. "But I don't regret it. Not even a little." I lifted my head to look at him. "What now?" He paused. "We take it one step at a time. If this was just tonight, I'll accept that. But if it's more, I want to explore it with you." My heart squeezed. There were 1,000 reasons to pull away, to say it was a mistake. But I didn't want to. "I don't want to be alone anymore," I said, voice trembling. "You're not," he whispered, pulling me close again. And for the first time since Michael's death, I believed it. The morning sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting golden stripes across the living room floor. I woke in Matt's arms, my head resting on his chest, his hand still wrapped protectively around my waist. For a moment, I didn't move. I just listened to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, grounding me in a reality I never expected. We didn't speak much at first. There were no grand declarations, no sudden promises, just quiet understanding. Matt made coffee while I sat at the table in one of his shirts. The scent of last night still lingering in the air. When he placed the mug in front of me, he smiled, soft, unsure, but hopeful. "What we did?" I started, my voice barely a whisper. "Do you regret it?" He shook his head instantly. "No. Do you?" I looked down at my hands, then back at him. No, it felt right, even if it was unexpected. The next few weeks were cautious. We talked, really talked about Michael, about grief, about boundaries, and what came next. Matt didn't try to replace Michael, and I didn't try to force something that wasn't real. We simply let it unfold. Some people might judge us, say we crossed a line. But love doesn't follow rules, especially when healing is involved. Matt didn't just fill the silence Michael left behind. He helped me rediscover myself in it. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving. I was living again with him.